From the Ministry of the Presidency in Georgetown, this is This Week with the President.
Welcome to This Week with the President, a news magazine which provides you with an in-depth look at the policies, programs and work of the President of Guyana in his quest to realize the good life for all Guyanese. I'm your host, Gomati Gangade. Thank you for joining us. In the highlights this week, President vows to intercept criminals, strengthen security sector. 1823 Demerara Revolt Memorial for Independence Park in 2018. President Granger says, Government, National Tush House Council and indigenous communities must work together. 3 new school buses commissioned for Georgetown students. These stories and more on This Week with the President. The David Granger administration has been aggressively working to stamp out entrenched criminal activity after years of neglect in the security sector. Though gains have been made through increased capacity building measures and the collaboration of the security forces and members of the public, there is still significant work to be done, particularly in securing Guyana's porous borders. On August 17, the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces visited Lethem, Upper Takatu, Upper Essequibo to meet with residents and members of the security forces, where he underscored the importance of strong security presence along Guyana's borders, as well as the various ports of entry, noting that porous borders create avenues for pirates, people traffickers and smugglers to perpetrate crimes that thwart efforts at public safety and society stability.
Our security starts on the border, right here at the Takatu, right on the Ireng. That's where security starts. If our borders are porous, pirates will penetrate along our coastline. People traffickers will traffic children and women. Contraband smugglers will bring in guns. As you know, Brazil is one of the world's largest manufacturers of small arms. Drug gangs will come into our country. Illegal migrants will come into our country. These elements are not friendly to us. They will jeopardize the safety of your own women and children, of our own communities.
This visit comes on the heels of the discovery of an abandoned twin-engine Beechcraft aircraft on an illegal airstrip in the region last week. In September last year, too, another abandoned aircraft was found in the Yurupakari village, just miles away. In light of this, President Granger urged the security forces as well as the residents to remain vigilant at all times so that they can prevent intrusion into the country's air and land space by foreign elements. He also made it clear that every section of society has a role to play in matters of safety and security.
Wherever you are, you can contribute to national defense. If you're in civil society, if you are a public servant, we want you to understand what the concept means. It means that Guyana as a whole would be able to rely on the cooperation of all sections of society, all the arms of government, the hospitals, the civil defense, the police, the militia, the region, the municipality. When flood comes, they don't come to government servants alone. It comes to all of us. So we have to have a collective response in which we help Mati. That's what TND means, helping Mati. And we must make TND part of our lexicon, that all of us are involved in the security of Lethem and the Rupununi. We must know that if drugs are coming in, somebody's going to die, somebody's going to get punished, somebody's going to feel pain. We must know that when people are driving cattle across the border, when people are bringing equipment across the border, going to Parabara or going to Marudi or somewhere, that somebody is going to be hurt. We have to own the Rupununi.
Guyana has a total of 181,587 square kilometers of borders with Brazil, Venezuela, and Suriname. These extensive borders, coupled with large tracts of uninhabited lands and a low population density, particularly in the hinterland, makes patrolling and policing a daunting task for an already small security force. At the community meeting in Latham, the president said that these challenges are what non-state transnational criminal syndicates are seeking to take advantage of.
These syndicates are rich enough to corrupt public officials, rich enough to get young, impressionable people to get involved in criminal activities. I see our borders, therefore, as the first line of defense against transnational crime. We have to keep our borders secure to prevent their being penetrated by transnational criminal syndicates. Border security is important to protect our economic wealth, so that the gold and diamonds coming out from the Rupununi, coming out from the Potaro Separuni, coming out from the Mazuni Kuyuni, coming out from Barima Waini, these are the regions which produce our mineral wealth. And you know as well as I do that some of that wealth is being taken illegally across our frontiers.
The head of state said that the government will be doing everything possible to ensure those who are culpable of criminal activities are not only intercepted but dealt with at the full extent of the law.
But there are a few criminal people who are holding us back. I'm going to find them and put them away where the sun don't shine, because they're holding back the development of a great people, a great nation.
Since taking office, the president has established a strong, comprehensive framework which saw the strengthening of existing security bodies as well as create new agencies, all with the aim of creating a safer Guyana. This includes the National Security Committee, which meets on a weekly basis, the National Anti-Narcotics Agency, and the National Intelligence and Security Agency. Additionally, a new drug strategy master plan has been introduced. To complement these efforts, the Anti-Money Laundering and Countering the Financing of Terrorism (AML-CFT) legislation was passed to boost the enforcement capabilities of the joint services.
So we have not been sitting on our hands at the institutional level. We've been creating the architecture. We have not completed our task, but we are not going to ignore the threats. We are preparing the correct structures to respond. And I'm confident that in the near future, we'll be able to bring that form of criminality to an end.
The International Decade for People of African Descent, proclaimed by the United Nations General Assembly, Resolution 68 of 237, to be observed from 2015 to 2024, provides a solid framework for the United Nations, member states, civil society, and all other relevant sectors to join together with people of African descent and take effective measures to ensure justice and development. In proclaiming this decade, the international community is recognizing that people of African descent represent a distinct group whose human rights must be promoted and protected. As Guyana takes part in the observance of the decade and its activities, President David Granger issued a call at the annual Coffee 250 Forum for purposeful and expeditious actions to ensure that the objectives of the decade are met and for there to be a recommitment to fulfilling the objectives of the observance.
And we need to work very hard to ensure that the next 80 months are used to achieve our objectives. So we should not deviate, we should not allow ourselves to be diverted from our mission. My brothers and sisters, The opportunity presented by a United Nations decade is unlikely to present itself during your lifetime. My brothers and sisters, we recall the fate of the United Nations International Year for People of African Descent, which began on the 1st of January 2011. Many people in this room would remember how the government of the day converted that event into a song and dance show. And there's nothing to show for the International Year. Nothing to show for the International Year. This must not be the fate of the International Decade.
Last year, in his address at this very forum, President Granger had called for the establishment of a plan of action which focuses on education, employment, and entrepreneurship opportunities, particularly for young people. This challenge was taken up by the committee, which subsequently formed a core group called the Country Coordinating Mechanism, CCM. This body, which is tasked with coordinating the programs, plans, and events for IDPAD in Guyana, has completed a draft plan of action, which will be fine-tuned through workshops and consultations before its implementation.
Bickering seems to be a preoccupation of some people in this country. All I urge is that this is not the time to bicker. This is not the time for brawling. This is not the time for breaking down. This is the time for organization, for education, and for implementation. This is a decade of determination, and our children and grandchildren will not forgive us if we fail them at this critical time.
In 2014, the United Nations General Assembly passed a resolution calling on member states to take steps to combat racism, racial discrimination, and related intolerance faced by people of African descent. The president said that Guyana has an obligation to take action and urged all stakeholders to carefully study and examine the contents of the CCM's draft report.
I urge the CCM not to ignore the validity of our history. At the same time, I urge the CCM to ensure that the documents it puts forward in its own name and the name of this international decade are based on the best information. The decade must be forward-looking. It is about the next decade. It's not about the last decade or the last century. The plan should be about the future.
Expressing his government's support for the program of activities for the decade, the president informed that in July, consideration for the new budget cycle began and noted that if financial declarations are to be made in support of the UN declaration, then such an allocation have to be determined and finalized between the next 10 weeks. Pan American Health Organization, World Health Organization, PAHO WHO representative to Guyana, Dr. William Adukro, said that the International Decade provides a solid framework for UN member states to join together with people of African descent and take effective measures for the implementation of a program of activities aimed at improving their lives.
In Guyana, Africans form part of the country's historical foundations from the over 2 centuries of slavery until emancipation in 1838. People of African descent in Guyana were a symbol of resilience and heroic struggle for civil rights and independence. Since independence, sterling contributions by renowned Afro-Guyanese have added to the country's development, the Caribbean, and beyond.
Mr. Jonathan Adams, who is a member of the CCM, said that Afro-Guyanese must now take advantage of the opportunity, which now beckons for Afro-Guyanese to shape their future.
It is achievable through our efforts. It is relevant to our present, our past, and our future, and must see us sparing no effort in time nor effort to see it come through. Let our children return to school for the 2017-2018 academic year feeling that something new, something good is happening for them. That at last, the light at the end of the tunnel is not that of the onrushing train, but it is theirs to a bright future. Mr. President, we thank you for the challenge and the opportunity. We will not disappoint you, Mr. President.
On August 20, 1823, more than 200 slaves were killed at Bachelor's Adventure on the east coast of Demerara for daring to stand up for their freedom from their colonial masters. Today, Guyanese enjoy freedom, which President David Granger believes was bought at the high price of the martyrdom of hundreds of enslaved Africans. For this reason, the President, on the occasion of the 194th anniversary of the 1823 Demerara Slave Revolt, has committed to ensuring that a memorial is erected at the Independence Park in 2018 to commemorate the 195th anniversary, even as he announced that August 20th will from henceforth be recognized as Demerara Martyrs' Day.
The Demerara Revolt caused an uproar in the British House of Commons. A vote to censure the government of the day failed, but public opinion was swayed further in favor of the complete abolition of the enslavement of Africans. The Demerara Revolt is remembered in the village of Bachelor's Adventure, where the massacre occurred. The villagers built their own modest memorial to the martyrs. I have published a presidential order declaring the 20th of August Demerara Martyrs' Day. I have promised to erect a memorial at Independence Park to commemorate the massacre on its 195th anniversary in August 2018 next year.
President David Granger, who made the announcement at the commemorative ceremony to mark the 194th anniversary of the 1823 Demerara Revolt, which was held at the site of the monument on Atlantic Avenue last Sunday, said that while the event is modestly commemorated in Bachelor's Adventure on the east coast of Demerara, he will ensure that a memorial is erected at the park where the history is buried. While African communities and several cultural organizations had called for the monument to be erected at the Independence Park a few years ago, the former administration went ahead with its plan to have the monument constructed on Atlantic Avenue. Reflecting on the Demerara Revolt, President Granger said that the massacre was a turning point in Guyanese and colonial history.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are assembled today to commemorate the massacre which occurred on Wednesday, the 20th of August, 1823 at Bachelor's Adventure on the east coast of Demerara. We are assembled to pay homage to the more than 200 martyrs who were killed on a single morning and to the uncounted others who were summarily executed in succeeding days. The massacre took place at Plantation Bachelor's Adventure, where the main body of troops, commanded by Lieutenant Colonel John Thomas Leigh, confronted over 2,000 rebels. Martial law was proclaimed, and after some talk, the troops were ordered to attack.
Describing the events of that day, President Granger spoke passionately about the horror of the brutal killings.
According to one account, the soldiers poured in volley after volley. The slaves returned fire but soon began to run, leaping into the trenches, into which many tumbled lifeless. Many were shot down on the road and in the cotton fields. By noon, the roadside was littered with dead bodies. About 200 slaves had been killed. End of quote. The troops then proceeded from plantation to plantation. They pursued fugitives holding summary drumhead trials, each lasting only a few minutes. They reached hasty verdicts based on hearsay evidence. The accused were found guilty, tied to trees and shot immediately. Their corpses were laid side by side on the ground, decapitated, and their heads placed on poles on the public roads in front of the plantations on the East Coast.
Mr. Aaron Blackman, a cultural activist who delivered remarks, said that the freedom Guyanese enjoy today is due to the struggles and sacrifices of their ancestors who paid the ultimate price. The younger generation, therefore, he said, should not take these sacrifices lightly or for granted, but use it as a motivation to move the country forward.
Our forefathers laid down their lives fighting for the liberation of today's generation, and it is through laying down their lives that the emancipation of slavery became a reality on the 1st of August, 1834. Let not their struggle be in vain. Let us kindle the spirit of the early African village movement, which was founded on cooperativism.
Ms. Audrey Hines echoed these sentiments, noting that while the ancestors would have laid the foundation, it is now up to the young people to recognize their sacrifices and make the best out of their freedoms.
My message to them is to embrace our president. My message to them is not only to embrace him, but to make him proud. Get their education, depending on what skill they have, get educated, and so they will not only be able to say, well, I can do this, but they will be qualified to do whatsoever they got to do. Because in this day and age, it's more qualifications. And so with qualifications, they'll be able to do not only a job, but a good job and do excellent.
Even as government continues to push for greater development and opportunities for the indigenous peoples, President David Granger believes that a concerted approach must now be taken by the National Tushaus Council, the NTC, the indigenous villages and communities, and the government and all its agencies to cooperate and work towards a common goal of development through education, economic empowerment, social protection, national security, and the protection of the environment. The head of state, who opened the National Tushaus Conference on Monday and also turned the sod for the construction of the NTC Secretariat at Sophia, fulfilling a promise and demonstrating the administration's commitment to ensuring good governance of indigenous peoples' affairs, said that all stakeholders must work together if progress is to be made in affording indigenous peoples a better life.
The government of Guyana, through the Ministry of Indigenous Peoples Affairs, and together with the National Tushaus Council, have an obligation to work together towards improvement in the economic and the social conditions of indigenous peoples in several ways. First of all, as the Vice President correctly said, is in education. We must work together to improve the standard of education in terms of the 3 A's: access, attendance, and achievement, especially in the primary and secondary schools in our hinterland communities. Indigenous communities must not be left behind.
President Granger said that it is in their own communities that indigenous peoples will be better able to practice, preserve, and promote their distinctive way of life, and the state must ensure that all the systems are in place to make this a reality. However, he noted that a concerted effort is needed and all parties, including the NTC, the village Tushaus, leaders and residents, must set aside all other interests and work together for a common vision.
The Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, therefore, would be a meaningless scrap of paper if the state did not take account of the quality of life within the indigenous communities where our people live. The state must aim at improving the situation of indigenous people as members of their communities, as citizens of this country. The National Tushaus Council, under the Diamondine Act, is responsible for promoting good governance, and I'm glad to see that the words are part of the ambitious motto of this conference. The NTC is responsible for the preparation of plans and for improving the quality of life of the indigenous people and their communities.
The President's remarks were supported by Vice President and Minister of Indigenous Peoples Affairs, Mr. Sidney Alicott, who said that the government strongly encourages dialogue.
You are here because we believe in dialogue. We believe in the contribution that you could make for allowing your communities to be better off. And that is why we're spending 66 million. That's why this government is spending that. It is not because we don't want you to be here. It is because we know that there are issues out there. And the government, as the chairman rightly said, cannot do it alone. You are part of the solution to the many issues. I have learned in community-based tourism that to get anything done is to understand the business. And the business in the hospitality business is about hospitality, not hostility. So I would like you to understand today that the platform that is going to be set here is for us to move into that opportunity of discussion and planning for your own development and for the unification of our communities.
Chairman of the NTC, Mr. Joel Fredericks, in his remarks at the opening ceremony, said that while there have been numerous challenges to the Council and the indigenous peoples during the last year, the resolve to find solutions is stronger than ever. He noted that the NTC, its leaders, and the residents of the hinterland are all committed to working with the administration to find the solutions which can create a better life.
We will make this commitment, Mr. President, to work together and all our Tushos, communities. Are you with me on this? Come on, Tusho, are you with me on this? I can hear you. We are willing to work together to build this nation.
Further, the head of state said that the government of Guyana cannot ignore the everyday living conditions of the hinterland communities, and it will continue to work through the Ministry of Indigenous Peoples Affairs to solve the persistent problem of hinterland underdevelopment. The Council also must be concerned about the economic and social problems which undermine the quality of life within some communities, he said.
We have to work together to create jobs for our young people, where they live, in their communities. We have to reduce poverty and we have to eradicate unemployment. As the Vice President said, the Hinterland Employment Youth Service, HUIS, and as I know personally, the Youth Entrepreneurship and Skills Training, YEST program, have been working to help young people, particularly young people of indigenous descent in hinterland areas, to become self-employed. We have to take these social issues seriously. They cannot be swept under the carpet. We must work together to reduce the incidence of alcoholism, of incest, of murder, of people trafficking, of non-communicable diseases, of prostitution, substance abuse, teenage pregnancy, and suicide within certain communities.
Referencing the need for greater hinterland security, President Granger told the conference that they too have a responsibility to ensure that Guyana's economic wealth and natural resources are not illegally exploited and exported.
We cannot have a situation in any region where foreign aircraft land and deposit contraband substances and no one saw, no one heard, no one knows what went on. Marvelous. We have to take responsibility for our security. Because these transnational cartels do not wish us any good. They will destroy your households, they will destroy your families, they will destroy your communities, and they'll erode the entire concept of good governance that we're trying to uphold at this conference today.
Expanding on the need to preserve the natural environment, he said that all stakeholders must work together to reduce environmental hazards, water contamination and land degradation, which can lead to large-scale flooding, as was experienced more recently in the Cuyuni-Mazaruni, Batara-Sipiruni and Rupununi regions. Urging the Council to make the best of the 2017 meeting, the President said that a conference should not become a talk shop, but rather a workshop and forum for planning, problem solving, and a means to strengthen the administration and to advance the social and economic development of villages and regions. Immediately after the ceremony, President David Granger, along with Prime Minister Moses Nagamutu and Minister Ali Koch, unveiled the artist's impression of the NTC Secretariat. President David Granger has been consistent in advocating for and working towards improved access to quality education for all of Guyana's children. He believes that education is the tool which can be used to reverse the cycle of poverty, develop communities, and transform regions into economic hubs. Improving access to education has won the support of private individuals and members of the private sector as they flocked to support the President's boats, buses, bicycles, breakfast, and books, or 5Bs initiative, which is aimed at ensuring that every child is given the opportunity to get to school and stay in school. Every administrative region in Guyana has benefited from this initiative as the government continues its mission to ensure that the barriers to the access to education are removed. The students in the capital city of Georgetown are the latest beneficiaries of this program, as 3 new 35-seater buses were commissioned by President Granger on Monday.
We in the coalition see education as the gateway to the good life. We see that by providing these buses, the boats and the bicycles, we will improve access to schools, we will improve attendance, and in so doing we will improve achievement. We want to see A students, and those are the 3 A's that we're working towards today: access, attendance, and achievement. A students.
The head of state, who delivered an impassioned speech, said that there is no greater investment in the world than an investment in children and their education, as he noted that the buses will transport the future engineers, entrepreneurs, and pioneers of Guyana's future.
But gradually, year after year, I want to see more Guyanese doing the same things that foreigners have been doing for the last 100 years. And it's the children who will be going to school in these buses who are going to be controlling our petroleum industry 10 and 20 years from now, who are going to be controlling our gold and diamond industry. I want to see a nation of owners, not a nation of observers, a nation of owners of our resources, not people who sit down and watch foreigners come and go. And the owners will be the educated people that we are now going to be sending to schools in these yellow buses.
The president noted that investment in a child's education is an investment in a nation, and it is up to the government and all other stakeholders to ensure that they are equipped and provided with the opportunities which can help them to create a bright future for themselves, their families, and their country.
We are living in the largest CARICOM state, the most beautiful, the most bountiful state. But the biggest region in Guyana, Rupununi, does not have a proper highway. Our rivers do not have proper stelling. Some of the aerodromes, the legal ones, not the other type. Some of the aerodromes need repairing and refurbishing. Who will do it? Foreigners? No. We have to train a generation of Guyanese technicians and engineers and mathematicians. Children who 10 or 20 years from now, who will be going to school in these buses, will become our engineers.
Noting the challenges in the sector, the president said that his administration will not be deterred from its mission until every Guyanese child is in school and stays in school. Further, the head of state said that it is for this reason that he established the National Endowment for Science and Technology, the NEST program, which provides funding to support science, technology, engineering and mathematics, or STEM initiatives. Guyana, he said, must begin to produce empowered young people who are versed in these areas and can positively develop the rich potential of this nation into real benefits for the citizens. Minister of Social Protection, Ms. Amna Ali, who has been responsible for the coordination of the 5Bs program, said that its implementation is testimony to a caring government with a vision to take Guyana to new and greater heights.
We will invest because we recognize that education is both a human right in itself and an essential means of realizing other human rights. As an important empowerment right, education is the primary engine by which economically and socially marginalized adults and children can lift themselves out of poverty and obtain the means to participate fully in their communities. We are cognizant that education empowers people with the knowledge, skills, and values they need to build an economically sustainable nation. Through our investment in access to education, we as a nation will empower our boys and girls.
Ms. Tonya Albert, a student from the South Ramveld Secondary School, in her remarks, expressed gratitude to the President and government, as she noted that she is proud to witness the donation of the buses, as it shows a strong commitment on the part of the government towards development of its young people.
I am overjoyed, so overjoyed, because the nation's children are a part of the government's plan. This is a huge investment in our education. Your Excellency, this action of yours will support student development and stimulate their desire to contribute to the growth and prosperity of Guyana. As we travel to school in style for the new term, for the new school term, I must say, we will be committed, determined, and focused in our pursuit of excellence. Your Excellency, there is an old saying in Guyana, put your money where your mouth is. Today, sir, you have done so on our behalf. Therefore, on behalf of the nation's children, I stand here to say thanks to you, sir, and all other stakeholders involved in making this dream a reality. Thank you for investing in our education by first ensuring that we get to school. We would also like to assure you that the path of progress set before us will never be abandoned.
Now we take a look at the President's diary. During the week, President David Granger met with Baroness Valerie Amos, now Director of the SOS University of London, former leader of the House of Lords and representative to the United Nations, where they discussed, among other issues, Ghana's green development pathway. President Granger, during the meeting, which was held at State House, said that Ghana is committed to combating the effects of climate change and global warming by protecting its biodiversity through the adoption of a green development agenda. He told Baroness Amos that the preservation and sustainable management of the environment is central to Ghana's development, despite the country's future as a petroleum-producing nation. On Wednesday, the President met and expressed gratitude to Suriname's ambassador, Ms. Nisa Korban-Babo, for her service and work in advancing and strengthening the bilateral ties between Guyana and Suriname during a farewell courtesy call at State House. The President said that during Ambassador Korban-Babo's time in Guyana, the two countries have been able to resuscitate the Guyana-Suriname Cooperation Council with the aim of further strengthening cooperation between the two neighboring states, the promotion of investment opportunities, and the exchange of culture. The head of state also received a courtesy call from reigning Miss World Guyana, Miss Veena Mukram, at State House. It was former President of the United States of America, John F. Kennedy, who said, and I open quote, "We must find time to stop and thank the people who make a difference in our lives," end of quote. For President David Granger, these words hold true. Last Friday, the President visited the Rupununi, where he sought and found the 10 women who unreservedly threw their support behind him while he was on the campaign trail in March 2015 in Upper Takatu, Upper Essequibo, Region 9.
Unfortunately, I did not get an opportunity to say thanks. So today, I have come to say thanks to Ms. Kubal McDonald, Mrs. Susan Williams, Yalinda Mariano, Azira Clement, Edwina Newenberg, Leontina Josie, let's call her Miss Josie, and Iris Williams. The others are not here, but I would like to extend thanks to them as well. The coalition I led did not win the region, but I think we won the hearts of the President of this country. I am truly thankful for what you did in March 2015, and I'd always be grateful for the voluntary support.
The women had voluntarily packed a canter truck with food, hammocks, Bibles, and other necessities and traveled with the then leader of the opposition over 3 days and 2 nights from Lethem to Ashiwib and back while he was campaigning in 2015.
There was nothing that I wanted that they did not provide. And this did not cost me one dime, $1, one bit of effort on my part. This was entirely voluntary. I've never experienced such warm support in any of my other political activities.
It's always good to say thank you. With that, we've come to the end of this edition of This Week with the President. Thank you for joining me. For regular updates on the Ministry of the Presidency, go to our website at www.motp.gov.gy, like our Facebook page, Ministry of the Presidency, and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at MOTP Guyana. Do have a safe and productive rest of the week, Guyana. Goodbye.